Cha Natui Sichokais. Hi, my name is Madeline Sayet. I'm a citizen of the Mohegan tribe in Connecticut. I work as a director of both Shakespeare and contemporary theater and serve as a clinical associate professor at Arizona State University with the Arizona Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies. Today, it's through the lens of an artist thinking about world building and systems that I'm going to be approaching Shakespeare's work. Thank you to Globe for Globe Symposium for having me speak today on Shakespeare and environmental justice. 4 years ago, I was asked to speak for the symposium on Shakespeare and the climate emergency, and at that time, I was able to frame my approach to the text through principles of relationality and kinship systems with our non-human relatives. I asked then, where does the story meet the earth? As an invitation to find moments of connection, community, and resonance with the land and its opinions throughout the plays. Often in my work, I apply indigenizing philosophical principles to the canon filled with hopeful insight. But today, as our world feels aggressively riddled with divides, instead of asking myself, where does the story meet the earth, I feel confronted with the question, can we begin to heal the earth while we are in such deep violence with each other? So today, I'm here to think about rotten policy and offer provocations into the ways in which the world of these plays is setting us up for the world we're in now. A world in which some people actively benefit from the disenfranchisement of others, particularly as it pertains to environmental justice. Shakespeare's characters move through a world full of storms, but it's very clear in Shakespeare's plays, no matter what else, that if someone washes up on your shore, you help them. You don't abandon the shipwrecked. You find them a disguise. You find them, disguise them if need be, get them to resources, warn them if they're illegal here. It may not go well for every character that does this, but if a storm has blown someone to your shore, it is your duty to help them on their way. So, in the politics of storms, I'm going to move through different moments in what could be referred to as the three Antonio plays: Merchant of Venice, The Tempest, and Twelfth Night. But it is not connections between the Antonios themselves that we're looking at today, but different power dynamics in relationship to the weather. In Merchant, Antonio the Merchant's very iconic start to the play, he begins with, and just again, a reminding that this is, we're looking at these as like openings, as theatrical provocations. He begins with his very iconic speech, "In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me, you say it wearies you, but how I caught it, found it, or came by it, what stuff 'tis made of, whereof it is born, I am to learn. And such a want-wit sadness makes of me that I have much ado to know myself." But it's the assumptions and denials that come afterwards that I'm interested in today. Salarino quickly, responds, "Your mind is tossing on the sea, as tossing on the ocean, shifting the conversation to his ships." Solanio says, "Believe me, sir, had I such a venture forth, the better part of my affections would be with my hopes abroad. I should be still plucking the grass to know where sits the wind, piring in maps for ports and piers and roads, and every object that might make me fear misfortune to my ventures, out of doubt, would make me sad." Salarino continues with another kind of comparison along that line, leading into, "But tell not me, I know Antonio is sad to think upon his merchandise." But Antonio does not agree. Instead, he says, "Believe me, no. I thank my fortune for it. My ventures are not in one bottom trusted, nor to one place, nor is my whole estate upon the fortune of this present year. Therefore my merchandise makes me not sad. My merchandise makes me not sad." Because not only has he not placed it all in one place, but his whole estate is not based upon the fortune of this year. He's not worried about money, not worried about storms or pirates. It's pretty odd when the topsy-turvy nature of a market at sea is riddled with dangers. To be a merchant and have gambled all your goods out on the sea should be enough to make one sad, stressed, anxious, but like the veritable Wall Street boys used to the ups and downs of the market, he does not seem primarily concerned with that because he has enough of a safety net. No risk, no gain, as they say. Yet usually those who say it don't have that much risk. Yet it seems arguable that if you're not worried, is it really a risk to you at all? Like those at the top of our own economy here in the States, Antonio does not ultimately face any punishment for his losses. The storms that destroy all of his goods at sea do not mean he will have to pay Shylock back. Rather, Shylock, and dare we forget Tubal, who Shylock had to borrow 2,000 of the 3,000 ducats he lent from, will never be paid back within the world of the play, because it has a faulty justice system. The judge is a rich girl, a friend of a friend, who dresses up to play pretend, to scam you. That is how this world works. The law is only for some. There are those who have much to fear when the storms rise, and those who do not. In the world of this play, we know that there are only few ways for Jewish people to make a living. For Shylock, whose only way to make money is by lending it, the act of his daughter, prior to Antonio's losses at sea, the act of his daughter running away with his jewels and ducats, isn't just his responsibility to himself or his own wealth, it's his industry. Whether or not people will trust him to do business, his ability to make any living at all, and people's ability to trust that he can lend. When people laugh in the streets that he's stressed, that he is sad over losing his daughter and his ducats, what place does he have in the world without them? The stakes of stolen ducats are so much higher when you make your living by lending them. You don't just need enough to support yourself, you need enough to lend, like a farmer who needs enough of his crop to sell. In a world in which women are property, as indicated by Bassanio's scheme to pay Antonio back, not by making money, but by wooing and marrying a woman who has enough money to pay Antonio back, it may be worth considering that Shylock lost more from the theft of Jessica by Antonio's friends and the jewels and ducats that went with her than he does by Antonio's losses at sea. But when Shylock seeks the only justice he can seek, amplified by his treatment, he is sentenced by Bassanio's new money wife in disguise to lose everything he has. All of his money as punishment. Shakespeare's anti-Semitic world easily laughs at the need Shylock has for his money, but in his situation where survival is based on lending, to have no ducats is to have no way to make more. It's not greed, but the base resource. To not have water, to not have food, he no longer has the means with which to live, not because he gambled on the weather, on the likeliness of storms at sea, but because a wealthier man of more privilege did. He says, "Nay, take my life and all, pardon not that, you take my house. When you do take the prop that doth sustain my house, you take my life. When you do take the means whereby I live. You do take the means whereby I live." Not only does this judge's ruling come from a random rich girl in cosplay as a judge, but she is someone who was easily able to provide twice Antonio owes without a worry. She says to Bassanio, pay him 6,000 and deface the bond, double 6,000 and then treble that. She is not sad upon her merchandise. Having successfully wed a rich girl to get him out of debt, Bassanio is not sad upon his merchandise either. But Shylock, as someone who the systems were not built to support, Shylock cannot afford to gamble with storms. Next, let's consider the obvious extractive colonial devices that occupy the Tempest. The Tempest, Antonio, and I apologize for not doing this in any sort of canonical order because it makes it a little confusing to track with the brain. But Antonio, Prospero's brother, in usurping him, sets Prospero and Miranda off to sea on a vessel that should have led to their deaths. But Prospero does not have that relationship with storms. Instead, he arrives on an island where he immediately is able to enslave the previous inhabitants and bend even weather to his will. Prospero uses Ariel to conjure a storm that will provide him with increased power and profit by those who are caught in it. When Ariel asks for his promised freedom for doing so, it is denied. Prospero, using Ariel, has the power to determine whether or not anyone will even be harmed by this storm. That's how little of a threat it is to him. When Ariel reminds Prospero of their owed freedom, Prospero immediately asks the white savior to Ariel, "Dost thou forget from what a torment I did free thee?" he says. Ariel says, "No." Prospero says, "Thou dost, and thinkst it much to tread the ooze of the salt deep, to run upon the sharp wind of the north, to do me business in the veins of the earth when it is baked with frost." Ariel says, "I do not, sir." Prospero, "Thou liest, malignant thing." That does sound like a lot to do, to run upon the sharp wind of the north and do business in the veins of the earth when it is baked with frost. One could thinkst it much to do all that. Meanwhile, the environment itself, being controlled by Prospero, has no justice but his justice. Ariel can say nothing. Caliban is tormented by the island itself despite it having previously been his home. In his iconic speech, he says, "When thou camest first, thou strokest me and made much of me, wouldst give me water with berries in it, and teach me how to name the bigger light and how the less that burn by day and night. And then I loved thee, and showed thee all the qualities of the isle, the fresh springs, brine pits, barren place, and fertile. Cursed be I that did so. All the charms of Sycorax, toads, beetles, bats, light on you, for I am all the subjects that you have, which first was mine own king, and here you sty me in this hard rock, while yous do keep from me from the rest of the isle." Prospero immediately switches to cursing him, giving him more orders so that he can get to his next orders, and reminding him of the pains he can inflict. Prospero controls those he has colonized with suffering and threats of further suffering, but also threats of the very environment itself. Caliban now lives trapped in a rock and fears what Prospero will make the island do to him. The island, his home. Despite Caliban's understanding that the island on its own is full of noises, sounds, and sweet airs that give delight and hurt not, now his home is his enemy. Prospero has made Caliban's home his enemy. When Prospero leaves the island at the end of the play, we do not know for certain whether Caliban is left to the isle, now that it is of no more use to Prospero, or taken back with Prospero and the lords as a captive, like so many indigenous peoples before him. After all, Trinculo had said audiences in England would lay out money to see such a thing. What we do know is that Prospero came, stole what he wanted, enslaved who he wanted, left with more power than he had before. That is the assumed order of relationship with the environment and with other beings that allows extraction and injustice to proliferate. Prospero and Miranda were sent off to sea by Prospero's brother Antonio, and Antonio sees his own shipwreck on the island as a prime opportunity to kill the king and gain more power, to get them when they're weak. Let it be tonight, for now they are oppressed with travel. They will not nor cannot use such vigilance as when they are fresh. Prospero and his brother are not so different. Both see the island not as a home, but as an opportunity to increase their power and standing by subjugating others. In Twelfth Night, both Viola and Sebastian are each rescued by sea captains, not nobles. But to be a captain at sea does not mean you have a place on land, and those captains are quickly forgotten. Twelfth Night's Antonio, the sea captain, is illegal in Illyria, but he follows Sebastian for love anyway. The most obviously queer-coded of the Antonios, yet of course there are arguments for all three, this Antonio is the only one who does nothing but good and gains nothing for it, ending up imprisoned for being on lands where he's not welcome. Directors make choices to try to deal with Antonio's unresolved fate, but more often than not, he's left in handcuffs and pining. But in looking at why he is illegal in the first place, we can return to Antonio's conversation with Sebastian. Sebastian asks, belike you slew great number of his people. Antonio says the offense is not of such a bloody nature, albeit the quality of the time and quarrel might well have given us bloody argument. It might have since been answered in repaying what we took from them, which for traffic's sake most of our city did, only myself stood out, for which if I be lapsed in this place I shall pay dear. Only myself stood out. Meaning only Antonio did not pay? Was he not able? Or Antonio was singled out for some other reason? Either way, Antonio alone stood out. In this summer's public theater production of Twelfth Night in Central Park, Antonio was not only illegal, but as the only non-binary person in the world of the play, a character entering a very binary world of Illyria drew added attention to their illegal presence, making it clear that for some, it matters very much which shore you wash up on. Even after saving someone else, Antonio is not automatically saved. This character is not deemed important enough for us to see their arc wrapped up and if their safety is secured. The issues entangled with the environmental justice of our world are represented in the plays, but they are not solved. In Midsummer, Titania and Oberon fight over a stolen Indian boy, and their fight destroys the natural world. Colonialism does not end and the world heal, but rather Oberon tricks Titania and steals the boy. Upon his deathbed, in H42, Henry IV gives Hal the iconic leadership advice, busy giddy minds with foreign quarrels. Move the problems somewhere else. Move the violence to someone else. Eventually, this turns into dumping your trash somewhere else. It doesn't matter if there is a storm, keep it away from your port. Treat our planet like it is not shared. Dump your trash in someone else's yard. H4 and Hal may not have known the overlap between the spiritual, the violent, and the environmental degradation that was to come, but the intersecting colonial links are unavoidable in hindsight. I recognize this may all seem dour compared to my usual type of remarks. To be reminded of the extractionist nature that exists inside these works is not why we turn to the plays, nor is it all that exists in the plays. So I want to point now to an alternative framework. At St. John the Divine Cathedral in New York City, the last weekend of August, the Public Theater produced Troy Anthony's new adaptation of Pericles as part of their public works program, performed by community members and free to the public, with 100 community members on stage, filling the church with Troy's gospel-inspired Pericles. You couldn't help but be inspired with hope as they sang out, "Joy is available." The world of Pericles is riddled with environmental crises. And yet, centered in this healing production, they sing, joy is available. It is available no matter your past. It's available. The storm won't last. Many storms have come. We've seen tragedy unfold, but we were not undone. Pericles is always filled with efforts at redemption. Pericles brings grain to Tarsus in its moment of environmental crisis. But in Troy Anthony's hands, when the people carry Thaisa from the ocean, bring her back to life, there is an intergenerational and ancestral wisdom that makes you feel like anything might be possible. Troy's ensemble made Pericles not the story of one man, but of the community who is with him. The community. After all, Pericles has been through. When Gower says, Pericles is now again thwarting the wayward seas, the community responds in disbelief. Another storm? But Gower comforts them. No, there's no storm this time. At that pivotal moment when Pericles' journey turns around. Marina may be kidnapped by pirates and sold into the brothel, but sings over and over again of light. Reunited with Pericles, she sings, dream now of sun-filled skies, rest now your weary eyes. The weight of the storm is apparent. In epilogue, Gower sings, every battle is tough in the beginning. You don't have to hide it or pretend. When the road gets rough and your world is spinning, deep inside you'll know your heart is on the mend. This storm will end. Troy's Pericles centers the source text, but offers the radical re-envisionment of not only our relationship to the text or to Pericles' journey, but to the storms that try to destroy him and the communities that keep him alive. The light we can still find. The storm as metaphor exists in tandem with the storm as reality, but again, you do not abandon the shipwrecked. No one abandons the shipwrecked. You find them, help disguise them if need be, warn them if they're illegal here, but if a storm has blown someone to your shore, it is your duty to help them on their way. I don't know a clear way out, because we do not have clear language for cycles of decomposition within Shakespeare's plays. The imagery of rot and decay are usually associated with evil or disgust or foulness. Rot in Shakespeare's plays is something to be in resistance to illness, plague. There's an unnaturalness to it. It's not an inevitable, but a marking of the grotesque diseases of the time. It is not understood that something being rotten in the state of Denmark is an invitation for change. If it is rotting, it will decompose, and from it new life will form. An illegal regime change transpired with the murder of King Hamlet, and no one is acknowledging it. Only young Hamlet, who can only acknowledge it as a son grieving his father, not as a citizen grieving their world, their country. If no one is grieving an illegal regime change, perhaps something was rotten in the state of Denmark to begin with. After all, Hamlet is rescued by pirates because they know he can pay them for it. Storms and light hold the metaphor for the cycle of new life for us in these plays. In Annalisa Diaz's essay, Decomposition Instead of Collapse, Dear Theater, Be Like Soil, she reframes the possibility for the industry to accept decay. She writes, what if instead of dramaturgies of collapse, we look to the earth and learn from natural processes of decomposition? Decomposition is gruesome. Pieces of an organism get pulled apart. Decomposition is intimate. Decomposers digest the dead. Decomposition creates new worlds. Nutrients recycle and release back into the ecological system. In that way, decomposition looks a lot like adaptation. A way that a story passed down to us by Shakespeare and George Wilkins found its way into Troy Anthony's hands and in a 100-person choir and lit up a 2,500-seat cathedral one weekend in August. There is hope in decomposition, in the next generations, but also in what the world does with or without humans. The storm is more powerful than us. It can be activated or angered by a man, but never fully controlled by one. If something is rotten in the state of Denmark, do we wait? Do we let it keep rotting until it undoes itself? Or do we look for where the healing can be as well? Do we also look for the light? Why is it okay in these plays to laugh at those who need money, who have to claw and scrape for money? Not having to worry about money shouldn't make you morally superior. Why is it okay to use other beings for power, to extract from land while it serves you and then leave it behind, never to think on it again, after you've destroyed people's own relationship with their homes, their ability to survive there? Why is it okay to forget the people who lifted you from the sea instead of exchange the effort? Something is rotten in the state. And how can we in this moment hold that truth, the truth of the storms that will come, and also that joy is still available. Katapatam Tamawash. Thank you.